All right, and welcome to another edition of the Solar Panel coming out of retirement. We haven't been here in, wow, since December. And I'm here with Trevor Booth. He's a writer for Bright Side of the Sun. He contributes here, he contributes a lot of different places. We were just here and watched the opening, the press conference for Kevin Durant. And we are happy to have you guys here. And we're going to talk about what we saw at the press conference. So, Trevor, tell me what's your biggest takeaway from what you saw at this press conference?
Yeah, Dave, I'm thinking back to just when I was a little kid and watching the Suns and Steve Nash and Sean Marion, Amari Stoudemire, all those guys, and how exciting it used to be in the building. And today, it's just looking there, and as a basketball fan, you see it, and it's Kevin Durant is here. Like, it's just unbelievable. And the more you get closer to it, the more you understand just the magnitude of this moment and how much it's going to mean to this city and this franchise. And you felt it today. The fans were obviously cheering for him every time he said a word. He sometimes, the media or sometimes him couldn't even get things off they wanted to say. But it's just so exciting, and you see it here, and you see him in the presence, and you just realize how much closer it's going to be and how much closer this team is to making potentially a playoff run with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this team was going to make the playoffs anyway. We all know that, right? They were going to be a top 3, top 4 seed, but they were still on the edge of being a contender, right? Like, I would always argue with fans that the Suns, the iteration of the Suns pre Kevin Durant, had the usual 5-7% chance of winning a championship. The new iteration of the Suns has a much bigger chance with Kevin Durant as your. I mean, we've been talking about needing a power forward for years. Well, you know what? He's 7 feet tall. He gets 7 rebounds a game, and he defends the rim. He's a secondary rim protector and all that. I think he's a great addition to this team. I think he's a seamless fit. But going back to your comment, Trevor, this is exciting for the Valley. This is the best but basketball player at least that's ever joined the Phoenix Suns as an acquisition since ever. I mean, you've got Steve Nash obviously won 2 MVPs after he got here, but he didn't win those until he got here. He was just a couple-time All-Star in Dallas, and he had a bulky back and all that. He had his own injury history. Charles Barkley had not won an MVP in Philadelphia. He was a multi-time All-Star, but he had not won an MVP. So those guys got better after they joined the Suns. So we can look forward to possibly Kevin Durant getting better after joining the Suns. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think just tying it into something KD talked about during the press conference is like when it comes to the Suns, the franchise being here and just the attraction that it brings, it's always been evident throughout the franchise's 55-year history. But KD was just talking about how in the last couple of years, 2019, I think you asked the question where it had just been appealing. And now he's here, and now he's a part of this franchise. And when it comes to the Suns' perspective, you're right. This is, at least in my time, you've seen the Suns and in the NBA a lot longer than I have. But in my time, this has been.
Oh, what are you talking about with my white hair?
No, not at all. I'm young. I'm 24, so I don't know as much.
I got kids older than you.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah. So see, I'm young. It's just a youth thing. That's all it is. So no, but it's exciting. It kind of just came down to he wanted to be here. The Suns obviously wanted to hear him. They make it apparent by the assets they give up, and now we're here. So here it is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. The one question I got to ask, and it was fun to ask, is what is it about Phoenix, about Devin Booker? We are in the concourse right now. If you're hearing anything coming through, we're in the concourse of the arena right now, and somebody just dropped probably a whole bunch of bleachers. We're not quite sure, but that's okay. So I got to ask a question. This is fun. I got to ask a question. What is it about Devin Booker that made the Phoenix Suns, made Kevin Durant and Chris Paul before him want to play for the Phoenix Suns? And he gave a great answer. He gave an answer that Devin Booker plays the game the right way. He goes about playing the right way. He's like a young, old soul, and we've heard that before. We heard that from Chris Paul, and now we hear that from Kevin Durant. These are all-timers. These are some of the best players that have ever played the game of basketball. wanting to finish their career with Devin Booker, and they both said the same thing, that they wanted to help and they wanted to watch him up close ascend and become one of the greats and be right here as teammates to do that. And that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, no, the super team came to him, like you wrote a few days ago on the site. So it's happening, it's here. And I thought it was really cool how Katie said, too, that they're going to someday build basketball courses after Devin Booker when it's all said and done. Just given how he plays the game. And you can tell that he earns a lot of the respect of the players around him. Kevin Durant talked a little bit about their Tokyo run in the Olympics and how that went as teammates, and they seem to get closer over that time. And just Suns fans can take a look at that and see how this is going to look. But I think, like you said, Dave, it's going to be a seamless fit. There's a lot of respect between the stars here. They know what each other can do, or they're going to get more used to that in the weeks to come. And Suns fans are going to love it once they get to see it in action.
Yeah, I don't think we know what we don't know yet. I mean, I asked Deandre Ayton after the game on Tuesday night. I said, "What do you think?" And it's Dwayne Rankin shared it on Twitter, so some of you may have seen this. But I said, "What do you think about Kevin Durant joining the team?" And Da is like, "I'm still asking myself that question because I can't answer it. He doesn't know what it's like to play with a guy that good. I mean, Devin Booker is great. Chris Paul is great. They are, but Kevin Durant is better." I mean, he even said it about himself today that he's like, "I'm one of the best players to play the game." So he has no lack of confidence, but he goes out there and he just does his job, and he does it better than just about anybody else who's ever done the job of the game of basketball. He loves it. He's a student of the game. He's constantly watching basketball. Chris Paul talks about constantly watching basketball, playing basketball, always being on the court. Devin Booker does the same thing, and he somehow attracts these guys. And for us to think, how many fans thought we were done attracting all NBA players when Chris Paul retired and the championship window was closing? How many people out here thought the championship window was closing? And now it's burst wide open, open again with Chris Paul, with Devin Booker joining this team before Chris Paul even ages out.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think just mentioning to some of your earlier comments, the connection between Monty Williams and Kevin Durant can be really interesting. Obviously, they have the history when Monty was an associate head coach with the Thunder. I think that 2015-16 year when they blew the 3-1 lead to the Warriors, unfortunately. And then they have history with Team USA basketball. So they go back a little bit. And Kevin was mentioned that today, how much Monty Williams and James Jones and the culture attracted him here to Phoenix. And there's obviously that respect between one another. And when it comes to winning championships, Kevin Durant's been a part of two with the Warriors. And he said just how important coaches are going to be in that pursuit. And it seems like he has the confidence in Monty already that they can get it done with the job at hand. And he said, too, that they have the pieces to get it done. And fans can see that they're certainly a contender no matter how you weigh through it. But that's something that's going to be watched, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? People rightly have not asked Kevin Durant if this Suns team is the best team he's ever played on, because it's not. I mean, that Golden State Warriors team was an all-time team. They don't get better than that one. You can't argue. I don't think you can argue that the Suns' top four is quite as good as Golden State's top four at the time with a prime Klay Thompson and all that. I get it. We're not expecting 5 straight finals runs here because they were all younger at the time too. But man, I'll take 1 or 2. I'll be thrilled with a championship. And this is a wide open Western Conference this year. Ted Lubin in the chat asks, isn't it strange that the Suns have no representation at the All-Star game at all? It's not really that strange. I mean, I also, I didn't ask, but another reporter asked BA the other night if he ever wants to be an all-star. And he was saying that obviously, of course he does. But this year was tough because he had the worst start he's ever had in a career, which is true. He was averaging like 15-7 for a month. And then all the losing because of all the injuries the Suns suffered took them all out of the all-star running. And I think that's very true. Obviously, Devin Booker would have been an all-star. He would have, if he had been able to play the last month and a half before the coaches picked the reserves, because Devin Booker isn't quite there at the level of being voted in by the fans yet. He might be now, right? Because Kevin Durant has been voted in a starter by the fans how many years in a row? I haven't looked it up. I should have looked it up, but he's been voted in as a starter, maybe a leading vote getter. He's the one. Is he one of them that picks the teams this year? But if not, he's pretty close. Uh, that's a guy that puts Devin Booker on the next level to where even if he's out injured, he would have been voted to the All-Star game. But I wouldn't worry too much about the fact that the Suns have this weekend off. They need their rest. Chris Paul needs a few days off for rest. He hasn't played up to his standards, and he missed a month and a half of games too. Devin Booker needs a rest. I asked Kevin Durant a few minutes ago when he thinks he'll be back, and all he could say is soon because he hasn't been cleared yet, and he has to follow some protocols. And they literally have a week before it's 5 days until their next game. They play next Tuesday. They don't play until then after tonight. So he's probably going to be cleared. I would expect him to play on February 24th and all these guys to be healthy. That'll be the day the new Suns iteration starts. It's okay that they're not being represented in the All-Star game, but they'll be back, and they'll be there for years to come. Kevin Durant's under contract for 3 more years after this, and Devin Booker's under contract for 5 more years after this. So we're in pretty good shape here in the Valley of Sun.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. This is a great time, and I think you talk about the championship window. It's now, it's here, and this is the time to get it. The franchise has not won a championship before, and you want to go all in at some point. And you just look at it historically, or at least, again, I'm young, so this is what I see. But in my time, it's been kind of rare that Arizona teams have kind of gone in to try to win a championship. There's been a lot of waiting periods. There's been sometimes you give up the assets. I think the D-backs did that with J.D. Martinez a few years ago. But this is just a really exciting time to see the franchise go for it because, it's the gamble, right? You give up Mikal Bridges, you give up Cam Johnson, but then you go get a guy like this to go try to do it. And this is, of the times, especially these last couple of years since Monty Williams got in here, I'd say this is probably their best chance. Obviously, it's going to be a lot of excitement coming forward.
Joel Ramirez in the chat asked if we're lucky enough to win the championship. Of course, that's a huge if. It's still maybe a 10% chance because no team has really that much chance to win because all it takes is health, right? Health and any kind of injuries can knock teams out. However, would we be the only team without an all-star player to win a championship? Maybe that's possible. I think it's rare, but I'm pretty certain that if the Suns have a pretty good next 20 games, you'll have multiple all-NBA players. And through historically, we're always going to know Kevin Durant was an all-star this year too. So I'm not sure if it'll be quite that dour for us all. So what else was I going to talk about? So we've got a guest coming on here in just a sec. We've got PLR going to join us and give his thoughts about the presser. But now I've lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah, the championships. This city has only experienced one true championship of the 4 major sports franchises. Of course, you've got, no offense to the lesser, smaller sports franchises, like the Rattlers have won several, the WNBA's Mercury have won several. At that level, there's been championships, but only one major sports championship, and that was 2001, the D-backs. The Suns need to add to that. They need to be regular finals contenders for at least a couple of years. That's what will prove that these guys have made. Well, they've already proven that they made the right trade. You would never second guess this trade, but I guarantee you that this will be considered the best Suns team ever when they do win the championship, if and when they do.
Yep. No, absolutely. And on paper, it looks like it, right? I mean, just look at, they had the banner right there with the 4 guys in the starting lineup. Like, it's just crazy to think about that they're going to have Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, and Deandre Ayton on the floor together. Like, there's just got to be so much excitement over that. And I don't think it's really going to hit until that opening night, whether it's February 24th for Kevin Durant or after. It's just going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, when I said that the Golden State maybe had the best foursome, right, with Durant and Klay Thompson and Steph Curry and Draymond Green, it's possible that this foursome won't be too far off.
Yeah, no, for sure. And especially since, I mean, just the threat at the rim. I don't know if Golden State necessarily had the threat at the rim like DeAndre Ayton is for the Suns now on those teams. It's just a little bit of a different dynamic. You had the shooters with Curry and Thompson, and now it's just going to be a little different because Chris Paul is obviously gets the chance to step back and lower his usage rate like he has throughout the year and can kind of set these guys up a little more. Devin Booker's a scorer who can get his own shot, like Kevin Durant, who said that he sees their games as kind of similar, how they can adapt within the system. I think there's a lot of creative ways they can integrate these guys where it comes up to setting their strengths and then playing off each other, that Monty Williams has a lot to work with.
Yeah, you and I were talking about this earlier before the press conference started about how easy is it going to be for these guys to mesh. These are three of the smartest NBA players in the entire league. Smartest basketball players, most well-read, most well-versed and all that, with one of the smartest coaches. I mean, Monty Williams has it pretty easy now. When he needs to get somebody bringing the ball up, he's got a choice of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Chris Paul. It's crazy. And then Deandre Ayton's just going to feast. Now, he's not always going to put up huge stats, Deandre Ayton, because guess what? Kevin Durant's going to take 20-plus shots a game. Devin Booker's going to take 20-plus shots a game. Chris Paul might take 10 if he's forced to, just because he's wide open. Deandre Ayton will take the third most, but it probably won't be a ton more than he's taking now, but they'll be easier shots. Mm-hmm. And he'll just be, I mean, he's going to be like us on the court by just fanboying the whole rest of the season on the court and just loving life. He got through his contract issues. He got over his little hangover from the contract, I think. And now DA, as everybody knows, is rolling now. He's going to roll all the way through. And he even said the other night, I'm ready to be the anchor again. I'm ready to be the anchor of this defense as we go through, because somebody also asked at the end of his answer when they asked about his all-star, being an all-star, he said, of course I want to be an all-star, but you know what I really want? I want a championship. That's what he really wants. And I like a guy like that. Now, there's some comments in the chat about Mikal also being great for the Brooklyn Nets. He scored 45 points last night. I'm so happy for him. I'm going to start DVRing him. Yes, I'm old school. I have cable because that's one of the only ways you can get the Suns on recording so you can watch them anytime you want. I'm going to be recording the Nets. And I love watching Mikal Bridges play basketball. But even he would tell you he would have traded himself for Kevin Durant. He's already said it, and he knows it. And when the playoffs come, you're going to need Kevin Durant. In fact, I remember. Now it's just I'm just recalling at the end of that playoff run when Suns lost to Dallas. Monty Williams did the day after press conference, and the day after press conference he literally said, "We are looking for this is May of 2022. We need another person who can take those shots, those big shots. We need someone like that." And you can't rely on a system. It comes down to just the guys on the court who can make the play when the defenses are keyed in. And he literally said in that quote, I'm going to bring it out and I'll post it on Brightside in a story soon. I'll remind everybody. Monty literally said, I was talking to Kevin Durant about this, and KD told me when it comes down to the end, you need guys who can take that shot. And last year, the Suns only had Book because Chris Paul was playing like crap, and Book was the only guy. So Dallas just rolled the dice. They doubled Book, they trapped Book, and nobody else could deliver. This year, you're going to have Kevin Durant delivering. It's pretty cool.
It is very cool. It's just going to be so much fun, I think, come playoff time. And then speaking of the playoffs, DeAndre Ayton's run 2 years ago when they got to the finals was just sensational. The records he was breaking with the field goal percentage and the rebounds and everything else that came in between. And now that he gets to be the anchor, I'm really going to be looking forward to seeing how he's going to do in this eventual playoff run and how he's going to do defensively and how he's going to handle the task at hand, because everybody's going to talk about the big three, right? But then he can really make a name for himself if he can show that he can thrive in his role this postseason, and made all the money now. That's taken care of. He's under contract for multiple years. So how's he going to perform in the playoffs time, especially with the team that's expected to go as far as the Suns are now?
You know, it's funny. We talk about big threes and big fours and all that. Should we actually give DA a new nickname, the Big Fourth?
That'd be pretty cool. See if that sticks.
He's the Big Fourth.
Yeah, no, for sure.
and he wouldn't even contest it.
Yeah.
Ted Lubin in the chat saying Mikal is becoming that guy. Okay. I love Mikal's development. I love Mikel's development, and I love the fact that he can take big shots, and he was making some big shots. But there is a difference in the come down of the come down in the playoffs. And I would rather have Kevin Durant on the floor than Mikal Bridges. I just would. We're going to add PLR to the show, Paul Richardson. He's going to be audio only because he's just getting off work. He's giving us his time after hopefully having seen that press conference. And I'd like to get PLR. I'd love to get your impressions of what you thought of that press conference.
Hey, sorry about the picture. Bad part is,
You there for us, buddy?
Can you hear me? Hey, can you hear me?
Oh, that's a shame. PLR's been sitting here waiting, but he's got a bad background, and he might be on mute as well. We'll come back to him in a little bit. So, Trevor, let's talk about the team real quick before we sign off, because we've been here a little while now, 20 minutes or so. Let's talk about the team itself going forward. Obviously, we know who the top four are. Who do you think is the fifth starter going forward by playoff time? Not Tuesday of next week, but by playoff time. Who do you think is the fifth starter?
A lot could change between now and then, but just based on Monty Williams' tendencies to kind of ride out his guys and guys who have earned his trust, I'd say right now in the interim it's Torrey Craig, and in the long term, I guess I'd predict it's Torrey Craig. There's different ways you can do it. I know people have talked about TJ Warren with his scoring ability. I know Josh Okogie's played really well lately, so there is that opportunity. But when it comes to that, I just think, and looking at campaign in the postseason last year, there was times where a lot of people thought Aaron Holiday could have came in right with how campaign was struggling and things that could have switched up. But Monty stuck with his guy who's been with him, who's had continuity, he's been in this system for a long time. And I think if you're looking at it from that perspective, he would apply it to a similar situation where you're trying to win a championship and you're trying to have guys that have earned your trust and make some continuity happen. And I think just with how things have gone, Torrey Craig's in that spot right now. And I would envision he would be down the line. But now, obviously, there's changes in the roster, right? So there's things that had to be calibrated and put together. And that could certainly change come playoff time. But I think in the interim, that would be my guess.
Yeah, so you're going to go for Torrey Craig. Yeah. What I'm saying is the part I agree with you about Torrey Craig is part of it is his loyalty and being the guy that's been there all year. Torrey Craig has been there all year. But so has Josh Okogie, right. And Josh Okogie actually can add one more little dimension that Torrey Craig can't, which is to handle the ball a little bit. Yeah. Torrey Craig, whenever he puts the ball on the floor, I just cross my fingers and close my eyes. I don't know what's going to happen. When Josh Okogie does that, he can actually make something happen. Yeah, we don't want him necessarily shooting all the time, but he can make stuff happen and he can go at the rim. He can also bring the ball across the timeline, which will be helpful as well. Let's try one more time to bring in PLR to our stream. How's it going, man?
What's up, buddy? I hope you can hear me now.
We totally can. How you doing?
All right. I'm doing good. It's good to see you, man. Looks like there's a little bit more gray than the last time I saw you.
It's the lighting. It's just the lighting.
Oh, okay. That's what you say.
Trevor's like 3 feet from me, and he has much better lighting somehow. I don't know what's going on. I think maybe it's the halo. I'm whitewashed or something like that.
Okay.
Halo lighting or something. I don't know. He's literally 3 feet from me, and he has much better lighting. So good for him. So how are you doing, man?
Doing great. Ready to get back. The physical therapy on the knee is done, so I'm ready. What a perfect time to resume.
Yeah, you timed it perfectly to be healthy by the time Kevin Durant starts playing for the Suns, huh?
I know. You know what, though? You guys said a couple things, and there's obviously it's Kevin Durant. I mean, all we got to do is go back to his press conference when he was with the Warriors, and he was being guarded by the little irritant who is no longer on an NBA roster. And he said, maybe you forgot who I am. I'm Kevin Durant. So we already know who he is. But there are certain things that the Suns have done that I think are just incredible and awesome roster-wise. Bringing TJ Warren back. Darius Baisley is honestly going to be a stud one of these days, and we're going to be happy that we have him. And I think those are little things. And the signing of Coop, you're getting another shooter that you didn't have to give anything up for, that Orlando just decided to part with. So this is a very well-constructed team, the way that they are currently constructed. I'm very excited about this team right now.
Yeah, you comment about Terrence Ross. I think he's a great pickup as a shooter off the bench, and he's also not afraid to take any shots. And again, I think one of the things the Suns really did to compensate for last year's playoff failure was to get guys who aren't afraid to take shots. And they first, for a while, they developed Mikal Bridges. They were trying to develop Mikal, develop DA. Those guys, their points in the fourth quarter went up this year. But man, Terrence Ross is never going to turn down a shot. Damian Lee is not going to turn down a shot. Kevin Durant obviously is not going to turn down a shot. One of the things I think about with Baisley is he's a good pickup because he's 6'9" and he can defend, but he's such a mess offensively, and I'm not sure if Monty Williams is going to want to do that with 20 games left. But I wouldn't be surprised if he was brought in so they could re-sign him as a restricted free agent after nobody gives him a big offer this summer, because you need guys for next year. The Suns only have 4 guys under contract for next year. Yeah, 5 guys under contract for next year if you count the partials on Cam Payne and Chris Paul. So bringing Baisley back as a restricted free agent might be better for next year. He's only 22 years old. So I love the additions they've made too. I love the way this team is positioned. What do you think? Who do you think should be their 5th starter by playoff time?
Honestly, I like T.J. Warren. I like shooters, and I know
that's another one I didn't mention just now. He'll get any shot for you too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love I mean, when you look at the Suns now, they can do a lot of different things offensively. And if the one thing that was bright and clear last year against Dallas was they had no one that could stretch the floor. You had Book that could shoot 3, but really that was it. It was keep a man on Mikal and dare anybody else to shoot. Well, you can't do that this year because we know what KD can do. We know what Book can do. So if you double them and you have a Damian Lee in the game, or you have a Ross in the game, or you have a TJ Warren in the game, these are guys that are knockdown shooters. And so that's now a problem for everyone else. And DA can just sit down there now and follow up. Or you could actually do something crazy like get him involved, because you cannot. I'm going to go way back, Dave. I'm going to go way back. A long time ago when Shannon Brown was here, he literally said to me, I'm going way back. He said to me, he goes, I look great in LA because I had the easiest shots in the world. Yeah. You're going to double Kobe and you're going to double Powell, and I'm wide open. So these are all just knockdown shots. Well, that's now what Phoenix has. They have a guy that you have to double and pay attention to. You have to turn your head when he moves. But they got 2 of those guys in Booker and in Durant. Yeah. It's just going to free up everybody else for practice shots. And that's going to be the biggest difference. And it really is.
Like Damian Lee is having one of his best shooting years of his career. And they've actually given him a bigger role than they expected to when they first came in this year, because he hasn't been afraid to take those open shots. He gets the open shots and he takes them. And now you've got these more guys who can do that. So I am looking forward to it. I love how the roster is constructed now. People are a little bit worried about defense overall. I think when you've got 7-foot Kevin Durant being your secondary rim protector next to DeAndre Ayton, and you play the kind of defense the Suns do, and you got Torrey Craig and Josh Okogie and a bunch of tryhards out there as supporting guys and then Chris Paul gets big steals, they're still going to be a top 5 defense. And they're still going to be able to perform in the playoffs because the guys on the court that you need playing offense can also play defense. That's huge. It's unlike Dallas, who just acquired 2 guys who can't play any defense and can be targeted in the playoffs. Now they have 2 of them instead of just 1, although Brunson should have been able to be targeted, but he was good enough last year where he couldn't be. Well, now they're back to that, being where they maybe can't defend in the playoffs, the Dallas Mavericks. The Suns will be able to. So, Trevor, let's go back to you for a sec. Yeah. Let's talk about so when we get to the playoffs and you've got whoever the 5th starter is, whether it's TJ Warren or Torrey Craig or whatever, who do you think is going to win the backup shooting guard minutes between Landry Shamet, who still is alive and well and will eventually return to the lineup, and Damian Lee and Terrence Ross? What do you like about their games and not like about their games?
That's a good one to do. Terrence Ross is obviously going to provide the experience, right? That he's had. And, Damian Lee has experience too. He's been a part of a championship team. I don't know. It's going to be a good one. And Landry Shamet obviously does his role well, or has the potential
Monty
to.
loves Landry Shamet. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't know. That's going to be fun to watch and an interesting one to watch because the Suns are going to need that guard depth, and that's something that's maybe needing to shore out, if anything, left on the roster. I'd say, if anything, I don't know. You really got to go with the guy with experience. I'm interested to see how Terrence Ross does. I'm intrigued by it, and he might be a guy who emerges out of this just because he's been here. He's been in the league for a while, and he's done this for a long time.
PLR, what do you think about those three?
How about this? First, Trevor, do you have anyone that loves you the way Monty loves Shamet?
Maybe your mom.
You know what, though? Here's something that we don't even have to question. Monty has something he hasn't had, a choice. He can go with the hot hand. So there doesn't have to be an established, this is the person. It may be Ross one night. It may be Shamet one night. It may be Lee one night. And now you have that opportunity to hunt and find what guy is on because of the guys you already have on your roster with KD. KD is, you remember, well, Dave, you remember this because we're old. Remember when you used to type with a real typewriter and you put that white strip in and you put that white strip in when you made a mistake and then you retype? That's Kevin Durant. Every mistake that you make, he is the fixer. And so if there's a guy that's off, you can stick with him a little longer to see if he gets on because you have KD there to make up a lot of those ills. And now that gives Booker that same thing to make up a lot of those ills because it doesn't have to be him. The way the Suns were constructed by KD, if Book was off, you knew it was going to be one of those nights where they'd struggle for a victory. Now, what if Book's off? Now you got to bet that Book is going to be off, KD is going to be off, Chris is going to be off, Ayton's going to be off, Lee's going to be. I mean, now it's a whole. Just one person makes that much of a difference, and so he gives you that luxury that you don't have to settle on one person as a backup. You can do different things with different people.
Ted Lubin in the chat brought up something really good. There's a lot of great comments in the chat. I'm sorry I can't get to all of them today. Man, I love you guys being back here for this. But Ted Lubin says the campaign might be the most important Sun not playing. He's also still alive and will be coming back to the court at some time soon. I heard he was working out, playing hard enough pregame the other night that he was building up a really good sweat, which is incredibly important when you had a foot injury to show that you're maybe over that. Now you're just trying to get back to conditioning. So I'd expect to see campaign, not tonight, but definitely next week. But that opens a really big question I want to ask you guys. When it comes to the playoffs, I'm not talking about the rest of the season. That'll be fun. But when it comes to the playoffs, is Cam Payne your backup point guard or is Devin Booker your backup point guard? PLR.
Cam Payne, because everything that he was supposed to give you before has now changed. What if the rotation is KD is on the floor and he's subbing out, or he's in when it's time for Chris to take a rest? Well, you don't have to worry about Cam Payne now having to score and be an energizer. He can also be a distributor. So I like him there because of all the things that he can do. And you save those minutes for Book when you really need him in the playoffs. Because remember, when the playoffs start, they're every other day. So there's not that rest that you can normally get. So I want Cam Payne in there, and I want Book on his normal rest, normal rotation to get the minutes so he's fresh at the end of games.
What do you think, Trevor? Do you think the Suns really need that small backup point guard, or should they go big?
Yeah, I wish I could hear what PLR said. My stream's not getting them in, unfortunately. But if I override here, I'm sorry. I think it's all going to come down to you get your chance, right? If you're Cam Payne, you see what happens. But obviously, we all remember last year's postseason run and what's going to come about that. Is he going to improve on that? How's he going to look post-injury? Is he going to be consistent like the Suns need him to, like he was in the postseason run a couple years ago? If it comes down to it, the nice thing about the Suns is when you have, those four guys in the starting lineup, you can mix and match and at least have one of those guys or two of those guys on the floor at all times. And if you need to put Devin Booker in that backup role, you have some flexibility to do it with some of the other players that you can make. And again, that's going to come down to how Monty Williams kind of calibrates his lineups over this rest of the regular season and makes the most of this roster. So I think it's very likely that Devin Booker could be in that spot, assuming if things don't go well with campaign and you kind of have to try to work things around that.
Hey, so assuming Campaign does come back and you have those other options, the Suns have a 15th roster spot open. Let's talk about that for a minute. Do they really need to look for another point guard so they're not relying on Saban Lee? But the only reason they're relying on Saban Lee is because Campaign is hurt. But do you need another backup besides Payne just in case Chris Paul gets hurt? Or at that point, do you just put Booker in there? What do you guys think about the 15th roster spot going to a point guard? PLR, you first.
Yes, honestly, deep down, I wanted Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, me too.
So I do want that that last spot to go
what
to a
I
point
heard
guard.
is that Reggie didn't. The Suns couldn't guarantee the backup point guard job to him, let alone the starting job, and that's why he didn't choose Phoenix, because they would have to be the third guy potentially.
Yeah, I think that's one spot I would have guaranteed as a backup, but that's just me. I'm not the GM, but I would save that spot for a point guard because you have to. In today's game, you have to plan on injuries as opposed to say if you get one. I'd rather plan on having one, but then it also depends on who's available. I mean, we'll find out over the next week or two exactly what will happen, who will be available. But I say leave it open. You just never know.
All right, so PLR says leave it open so that you can get the best backup third string point guard possible. Trevor, what do you think?
That's a tough one. I know you wrote on Kevin Love today, and I know Kevin Love has been an attractive name for the Suns for a while, just his passing ability and experience.
And his friendship with James Jones.
There you go. Yeah, so there's that too, and obviously there's a lot of trust, and I know Chris Paul's friends with LeBron. LeBron has a good relationship with Kevin Love, so I'm sure there's some trust there. I'd look at him. I guess I'd say I'd look at him for that final roster spot or around that time just to see what he can do still, because he does have value. He does have leadership value, and I think that's something that could benefit the Suns. I think really Love would be a good fit if he were to come here.
Yeah, it'd be interesting having Kevin Love in the lineup. Obviously, he would have to take Jock Landale's role, and possibly even Biz's role as the primary backup center, because I don't think he can play forward in this. Although I said the same thing about Dario Saric, and he was fairly effective next to another big. So it's possible Kevin Love could still do a better version of Dario Saric over the last few weeks. If you like what Dario did, you're going to like what Kevin Love can do. So I think that right there is pretty good. I don't know. PLR, Russell Westbrook. What do you think about him?
Okay, when I mentioned his name on this show about, I don't know, 6 months ago, you basically called me everything but a child of God. And I play, and this is what I can say, play the tape. I think Russ would be fine if, and only if, it's okay with KD. That's the one time I go to the player for sign-off. If KD says, hey, I think he can help us, bring him in, then I think you bring him in. If KD says no, this is when one time I go to the player for their opinion.
Yeah, okay. I would just not even talk to Russ at all. And I'm going to call you everything but a child of God for saying that. Because Russ, when he's out there, is so Russ-centric. I know he gets a ton of assists, but his assists are on purpose to get. And he just doesn't. What did the Lakers locker room reportedly call Russ? He called him a vampire because he sucked all the life out of everything when he was there. I don't think this is the right team and the right time for Russ, whether KD would be okay with it or not. KD was also okay with what they built in Brooklyn, and that didn't work out so well too. So I'd rather just not. But that's my opinion. Trevor, what do you think about Russ?
I am not the biggest Russell Westbrook advocate. I'll start with that. I loved what he did earlier in his career. I thought he was the ultimate competitor.
Oh, we just lost you. Trevor just unplugged himself by accident. So he says he's not. So that's 2-1. You're outvoted, PLR. Among people who don't matter, you're outvoted 2-1.
I just think that when you get to the playoffs and you need an energy guy, and he obviously knows he's no longer a starter in the NBA. That goes without saying. So he knows his role would be to come off the bench, be a sixth man. Or a seventh man. He's not going to displace that. But who are you going to get that's going to play harder for stretches of 6-7 minutes and give you everything? Now, I know he's not perfect. He's not closing games. But if you're in the second quarter and Chris is in foul trouble and you need some energy, who's better? I mean,
Yeah, but Russ is not going to take that job you just described for him. He is not going to take that job you just described for him. He is not going to take the 6 or 7 minutes when someone needs him. That's he's going to want the big role. I just don't. That's the big problem I see with Russ is he's not going to take that break glass in case of emergency role. He's just not. All right, let's change. Let's move. There's a couple of questions in the chat of they're worried about our wing defense now that Mikel and Cam have been traded. First of all, I think you're forgetting that Kevin Durant is replacing one of those two guys. And Kevin Durant is one hell of a wing defender. He just doesn't get recognized for it because of all of his offensive exploits. He's got a 7'5" wingspan just like DA. He is great on that. And then on the other wing, you've still got Torrey Craig. You've still got Josh Okogie, who actually has a 7-foot wingspan. And is a really good defender as well. It's just a matter of whether those guys are going to be making their shots. Torrey Craig and Josh Okogie, and then you've got T.J. Warren, who has gotten better at defense. He's not ideal, no, but as a fifth guy, he might be all right. You just got to play the guy who isn't tanking your defense and your offense, and see how it rolls. I'm not as worried about the wing defense as other people are. What do you think, Trevor?
Yeah, I think it'll come along. I think it'll come along, and it's a part that the Suns are going to have to develop, right? There's a lot of areas that they're going to have to develop coming up. And just if I can go back to the Russell Westbrook thing real quick, not a big Russ advocate, a very good competitor earlier in his career. Don't see it now. He's someone who needs the ball in his hands. He needs to be number one in order to produce, and I just don't think that's going to fit with the Suns. And if he is the vampire that the Lakers said he was, then let's just not have it at all. So getting back to the wing depth, I think it's going to develop. I'm really interested to see just how Darius Bazley is going to do under Monty Williams in his tutelage. This was a guy who went into the G League and not even out of high school, so may not have even had the best development coming into the league and was still a first-round pick and is still a guy that has a lot of untapped potential. So I'm keeping my eyes on him. I think he's going to come on very nicely if the staff can get him into a role that's comfortable in terms of backup playing defense. And if his defense is a big, significant impact, it could become even critical for the Suns if he is trusted to guard top guys and proves he can do something like that in a role, whether it's limited or somewhat more productive. So I'm interested really to see what they're going to do with him.
All right. Last option that we're going to discuss here, and then I'll let you guys go. John Wall, PLR.
No, not today. No, thank you, and no. And I like John Wall a lot, and I think he'd be great. My problem is he is always hurt. And when I say always, I mean he is always hurt. So if the Suns training staff is magnificent, if they can work their, Mr. Miyagi 2-hand clap, rub it on the knees and shoulder and legs and get him going, then maybe. But the way he is now, he's just always banged up. So what good is that going to do you?
Yeah. What do you think, Trevor?
Another guy who is older in his career, obviously doesn't have what he used to in the past. I think the Achilles injury really hurt him, and we've seen him just really limited now, and he's a guy who's going to have to be secure in whatever he does in terms of a role because he just probably can't exceed it too much at this point in his career anymore. It's another risk. I would just say, again, no, because like you said, Dave, I'm more opting for the Kevin Love type Dario Saric role. I think that would work well for the Suns, and they have different ways they can work within that backup spot to manufacture it if they need to. So I would just say that would be a little bit more valuable. So I would say no in this case.
Yeah, Hello points out third string wouldn't play unless someone's injured, and we have been talking about that. That's true. I think PLR hit the nail on the head too. That you can't count on John Wall being healthy at the time somebody else gets injured in order to play. Russ, I don't think he'd wait around for somebody to get injured. He'd get frustrated, and that would suck life. So actually, of the old guys the Suns could sign for the 15th spot, I'm still kind of leaning toward a Kevin Love type. They have enough interchangeable wings who are not that awesome, so I wouldn't add like a Will Barton or anything like that anymore now that they got Terrence Ross. I think they're I wouldn't call it deep at wing, but I would call it full, a room full at wing. And I think they have plenty of centers, unless you think Kevin Love is going to beat out the backup centers that the Suns have now. Um, and then, do you think Ish Wainwright should be promoted to from a two-way to a full roster spot as another one of those interchangeable wings over signing another guy off the street? PLR?
No, and I think the wing thing is kind of overblown. The only time I honestly think the Suns are going to have to worry about enough wing defenders is if they get to the finals and Boston is there. But otherwise, I think wing wise they're fine. And I hear you guys saying Kevin Love. Again, to me, Kevin Love is a 2 game better than John Wall. He is always banged up. And are you going to mess up your rotation, no matter how talented he is, and no matter how great he can do certain things? Like, he might be the best outlet passer in the NBA still at his age. But what is he going to give you in a number of games? Because he's always banged up. Whereas I'd rather get a guy that I know is a little healthy. And I know what people say, and I'm not caping for Russ, but I don't trust everything that comes out of the Lakers locker room. I mean, everything is designed to complement one person. And if that one person isn't happy, then everyone else gets thrown under the bus. So I'll just say I'll take a little caution with that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, let's do final thoughts from the KD press conference. Let's go back to KD being introduced to the Suns fans today, how the press conference went. What's your impression of the way KD answered questions today, Trevor?
I was a little surprised. Maybe this might have been a little bit of a generalization, but I know Kevin Durant has had some run-ins with the media in the past and maybe hasn't looked at it in the best way. But I thought he was pretty articulate today. It seemed like he was humbled to be here. He loved to be around the fans. They were giving him everything, and he seemed to love it. And he really seems like a guy who's focused and a guy who's comfortable with where he's at. He understands that he had an opportunity to win in Brooklyn, and it sounds like even though everything that went on over the summer, he was still dialed in with this Nets team this year. We've seen it in the statistics. They were top in the East or number 2 in the East for a while. And I think he's ready to go with this team. So I thought he answered things really well. I think there's going to be that process that he knows about. There's always a process with the championship team. And it's one that he's going to buy into. And I think one thing that was cool that he said, for the fans especially, is that they were giving him all the praise. They were, we love you, KD, all this, and that. But he's like, I still got to go prove it for you guys. I got to prove that I'm going to be the guy that you're looking for, the piece that's going to get you over the hump. And I think he's looking forward to doing that. I thought that was a good answer that shows he's ready to work here and not just walk into something expecting to win. He's ready to go. So that was a good point of the press conference.
That was a great thoughts. Okay, PLR, what do you think as your takeaway today from Kevin Durant?
Kevin Durant is a one guy in this league that is a true hooper. And the one thing I love about him is he is always happy till he's unhappy. But fortunately, the Suns have him for about, I believe it's 2 more years on the contract, 2 full more years on the contract. So 3
after this year.
So usually he gets unhappy at about year 3. So hopefully after then, there's 2 or 3 banners hanging up in the rafters. But he's always going to be professional when he gets somewhere. He always is. He's a guy that loves to hoop. He's that dude that wakes up, takes a shower, and goes to work. And he will always give you everything he has on the court, no matter what. And we see that, by the way. He's starting his career here in Phoenix, or restarting his career here in Phoenix. But Kevin's always going to say what he needs to say. Let's ask him those questions in 3 years when there's a couple of titles and everything is going the right way. But Kevin's always happy till he's unhappy. But he's a great, in my opinion, I just said this on my show, I think he's the most talented player in the NBA. Unguardable, shots unblockable, and he can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. He's a mid-range guy that can shoot threes and can drive. What else? What else do you need for a team to get over the hump? Remember, he's a half shoe size away from almost going to the finals by himself. The guy's outstanding, and he's going to prove it here in Phoenix.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, PLR. We talked about this at the very beginning, Trevor and I, after that press conference. Kevin Durant is the best player the Suns have acquired in franchise history at the time they acquired him. Steve Nash won 2 MVPs after coming to the Suns. Before that, he was a 1 or 2-time All-Star. Charles Barkley was a multi-time All-Star, but he didn't get his MVP until he came to the Suns. Kevin Durant still has to prove it, but at the time, right now, he looks like the best acquisition the Phoenix Suns have ever made. And my final observation from this press conference is, can you imagine how happy James Jones must be right now? This was the first press conference James Jones has never had to take a question from a fan or from a media person asking him about his roster construction. He didn't have to take a single question in this process because he delivered Kevin freaking Durant to the Phoenix Suns. That's it. So thank you all very much for coming. I appreciate your time today. Thank you, PLR and Trevor Booth, for joining me on the show, and for all the fans that are in the chat. You guys are the best. This was a little one-timer, come out of retirement just to talk about KD. We might do something around playoff time.
Come back, Dave. Come back, Dave. Come back, Dave.
Maybe around playoff time. Love you guys. Thank you so much for this, and we'll talk to you all again soon.